next installment now on chord progressions and playing chords and all that kind of thing. So we've been through how we make chords. We've talked about the practical way to play a major chord scale, just in a very guitar-y way, using the shapes that we know or may have learnt on that occasion. And today what I'm going to be doing is showing you the same chords, more or less, the same scale family, so the key of C, at least to begin with, but we're going to be looking at it from the minor perspective. So in the last lesson we talked about the major chords in C, so C, D minor, E minor, F, G, and then I talked about how we could come back to here for A minor, for example, and we have an B half diminished here, and then C. We looked at a few different examples of that, and I talked about the root 6 shapes and the root 5 shapes, and how that order is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, half diminished, and back to your major. What we're going to do today, though, you'll notice in those steps we had an A minor chord. We also had a D minor and an E minor, but our most common point of reference to write a tune or come up with a progression is that 6th degree. So in the key of C, C, D, E, F, G, A. That's something I also covered in the theory for Rockabilly and all that sort of stuff earlier on, so go back and have a look at that. So from here, what I want to do today is that 6th degree being A, let's make our chord progression from A, and let's see how that sounds. So what we're going to do, we're going to start on A minor, we're going to play our B half diminished, we're going to play our C major. Okay, now we could also use that here, whatever you're comfortable with. D minor, E minor, F major, and then, or we could go F here, F major, and then G major, and we're back to A minor. Now if you're sitting there and you're saying, whoa man, slow down, I don't know those chords, you need to watch the last video, so that is the chord scale ones. I'll mention that in the description. What I want to talk about though is how if we use that 6th degree of a chord scale, okay, and we build a progression from there, we're going to get that dark sound. So that progression that I played at the start, A minor, F major, C major, G major. Okay, so those chords, they're just straight out of C major, they're out of that family, but we've started from a different perspective, that being the 6th degree. Now the reason we kind of go to that is not because you can't start a progression from any of those other chords, it's just that in terms of most composition that we listen to, that's what we generally hear. Most songs are written from that perspective. So you'll hear like a lot of songs from, like let's say it's an E minor, chances are it's in the key of G, it's from that family. So it's that 6th degree, so G, A, B, C, D, E. So if I look at all the chords in the key of E, we're going to have, if we look at all the chords in the key of G, we're going to have G major, A minor, B minor. Okay, so we're just taking the steps of tone, tone, semitone, and I'm telling you what the quality of the chords are we're building off that. So first step, or first chord, or G is the major, A minor, B minor, C major, okay, that's the semitone step there. We've got another tone, we get a D major. Now we can go to E minor here, or I can go to E minor here, same thing. And then we've got the F sharp half diminished here, and then we've got the G major again there. Now if I want to play a minor chord progression from here, I'm going to play E minor, or E minor from there. Then I'm going to go to my F sharp half diminished, or I can do it here, G major, and then it's going to proceed as the G major chord scale did just before, etc. So they're your chords to work with in that key. So if I make a progression in the key of E minor, I'm just going to use chords from C. How you choose those is kind of up to you. Let's go backwards a little bit from E minor and see what happens in terms of the steps. E major, C major, and then back to E minor. There you go, there's a chord progression. I had no reason for doing that other than I thought, why don't I just play a few chords backwards? I like the sound of it. There you go, that's how you make a chord progression. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. So, and you don't need to have, you can make a great chord progression with 2 chords. We could take the E minor, the D major. Let's explore that very, very briefly. I actually think I'm going to have a really good time playing over that. It sounds really cool. So let me just set my looper up. Here we go. Let's just play a little progression over that. There you go. I mean, look at that. Great fun. 2 chords. That's all you really need. And I've just taken that straight out of G major. I just kind of made E minor my focal point. You might even resolve to a G major, and that does create a mood shift. Like if we went... And that would raise the question, well, is it in E minor or G major? But the reality is it's all the same thing. So it's a very simple lesson today. In reality, it doesn't need to be too long, because if you've worked on those other chord scales, that's kind of all you need to know. Now, not to go too far into another subject, but if you wanted to work off other chords and try and make a progression that cycles around to a different chord, and I say that because it's really how you start and finish that defines a progression, you can absolutely use any chord. So let's say I want to use A minor, but I'm going to use the key of G. That means my next chord could be a B minor, for example. And that would differ from in the key of C, where when I played A minor, the next chord was a B half diminished. And then we could go to a C. But for example, if I'm basing from a completely different point as opposed to the 1 or the 6, which is what we've been discussing, you can create progressions that way as well. And it can be challenging, but it can be very interesting. So let's say we use an A minor, we use a B minor, and in the key of G we had a D major. Let's use a D major. Back to A minor. Okay, there's another progression to explore. Let's have a look at that. So again, this is a little bit of a bonus lesson here. I guess just something a little bit different. So this is where you start to get interesting ideas. Okay, so... instead of the loop without dubbing, so you heard what I played before again, which it was okay the first time, didn't really need to hear it the second time. Anyway, never mind. So you get the idea how we can start from different points of those seven chords that we get from the major scale, and it gives us a great starting point. Next lesson is where things are going to get really exciting. I've taught you some rules. Now we're going to start breaking them. And this is where you really get into that cool, interesting territory that I talk about sometimes. And you'll start to see why building up that theory and having that understanding actually lends to creativity, not, doesn't rob from it. It doesn't box you in. It's just about understanding what you're doing and what the possibilities are a little better. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I tried to mix this up with a little bit more playing today and less waffling on. So I hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for some cool things to come. I've got a video coming out where I write a song, and in the video I've written a song. It's pretty bad, but it's pretty cool because it addresses the questions that I do get asked about songwriting, particularly for Psychobilly. So please check out the Patreon if you're not a subscriber, a member of that. I think it's worth doing, of course, or I wouldn't be here saying that. But yeah, check it out and do consider it. And thanks for following along. I really appreciate it. I'll catch you guys in the next video.